morning, students. Once again, a very hearty welcome to the English world of Aradhya. I am Rasmin sir, imparting knowledge of English to the students of 9 to 12 standard in English medium. Students, in our previous two videos, we had taken your poem, A Legend of the Northland. We had already discussed the poem in detail, line-wise, stanza-wise. So today we will take up the question answers and we will also see the figures of speech of every line. So look at the first question. The first question, which country or countries do you think the Northland refers to? So I already told you Northland means the area which is around this North Pole. And in that the countries which we can include are Greenland, Canada, Norway and some part of Russia. So these four countries names you are supposed to give. Okay, then second question. What did Saint Peter ask the old lady for? What was the lady's reaction? So the entire poem is in a story form. You already know Saint Peter who was traveling while preaching. He came to a cottage in the Northland and he was very much weak because of fasting and traveling. So he asked for one of the cakes from that lady's store. But the lady found all those cakes very thick enough, very big enough. So she could not give them. She didn't want to give because she was a very greedy lady. Finally, she made the thinnest cake like a wafer. And when it came to giving, she did not give. She thought that it was too big to give. So she did not give even that cake to Saint Peter. So that was the reaction of the lady. How did he punish her? This is your third question. So, when she did not give any cake to Saint Peter got angry. Okay? He was irritated by this greedy nature of the lady and he thought that she is not suitable in the human form. Human forms or human beings should not be so selfish. Okay? They should help out one another in the time of needs. But he thought this lady did not give anything, so he thought that this lady is not suitable in the human form. That's why he transformed her into a bird. Name of the bird is woodpecker. Okay. So that is how Saint Peter punished her by cursing. Okay. Do you think that the old lady? Okay. Fourth question. How does the woodpecker get her food? So you see, woodpecker has to go on boring in the hardwood. Then only he can get its scanty food. So for little food also he has to keep on boring into the wood, very dry hard wood. Then only he can get his food. So that is the way. Okay, now do you think that the old lady would have been so ungenerous if she had known that who Saint Peter really was? What would she have done then? So if she already knew that Saint Peter was a saint, I don't think that she would have not given anything. Instead, she would have given the best cake to Saint Peter if she had known that this person is not an ordinary person but he is a saint. So she would have treated Saint Peter in the best possible manner by providing the best food and showing all the hospitality. Okay? Okay. Next one. Is this a true story? So in the beginning only I told you this is a what students, a legend. Legend may be, it is known as a traditional story. It is compared to a ballad. So that may not be authenticate. Okay. So that's why we can say it is not a true story, students. And the second part of the question says, which part of this poem do you feel is the most important? So the most important part here you can say is the one where the lady is transformed into a bird by the rage, by the anger of Saint Peter. Saint Peter cursed her when she did not give any cake to Saint Peter. Saint Peter cursed her and transformed her into a bird named woodpecker. So that is the most important part. Okay. What is the legend? Why is this poem called a legend? So legend I already told you, legend is a traditional story which is told from generation to generation. Okay. It doesn't have any fact. Okay. It may be true, may not be true. Mostly it is not true only. So here students, why this poem is called a legend? Because students, the poet itself himself accepts that I don't believe it's true. There is a particular line like this. कि the people of that Northland tell a very curious story to their children. And then the next line only the poet says that I don't think it is true. So from that line we can make out that this particular poem is a legend. It is just a story which doesn't have any base. Okay. Write the story of a legend of the Northland in about 10 sentences. So entire poem you can write it easily. So with that we come to the end of this question answers. Now we will look at the figures of speech. Okay. First line, away away in the Northland. So it is quite easy. The word away is repeated twice. So the figure of speech is repetition. Where the hours of the day are few. Where the hours of the day are few. Now students, if you know the difference between few and a few, then you can understand that this is an overstatement. Few means almost none and a few means some. So here before few a is not added. So it gives us negative meaning कि वहाँ कोई day hours होते ही नहीं है. No, there will be some day hours, but they are very few, very little. A few means some, few means none. So that's why it is hyperbole. An overstatement, that figure of speech is known as hyperbole. And the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So they, that, them, through. So all these words through, we take out through, but they, that, them, all these words begin with the sound. So it is alliteration. And here also it is hyperbole, students, because the nights are not so lengthy. It is just an overstatement made over here. So that third line is hyperbole. And fourth line, that they cannot sleep them through. So again sentence is negative. So whenever negative sentence is there, it is what? Litotes. So the figure of speech over there is litotes. Let's come to the second stanza. Where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows. So here S sound is repeated. If we take these two lines together, S sound is repeated through the word swift, sledges and snows. So it is alliteration. A W sound also is repeated over there, where and when. So then also it is alliteration. Okay, students? And the children look like bear's cubs. So look like, L sound is repeated, so it is alliteration. But children are compared with the bear's cubs. And the word of comparison used is like, so it is simile also. So this particular line is both simile also, alliteration also. In their funny furry clothes. So F sound is repeated through the words funny and furry. So it is again alliteration. They tell them a curious story. They and them. So it is the sound. So it is alliteration. A curious story. Curious story. Story is not curious. Children are curious. So epithet is transferred from children to story. So it is transferred epithet. I don't believe it's true. Okay, so here also negative statement is there, so it is litotes. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. So in these two lines, you word is repeated twice, so you can say it is alliteration, repetition, and yet you and again you. So that way also students, if you say tell and tale, so that is also T sound is repeated, so it is alliteration also. Okay. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below. So the world below means the world, our earth. World below means ये हमारी दुनिया. So that is the words world below are used for the earth. So it is metonymy. Okay. And walked about it preaching just as he did, So here also students, it refers to the earth. So here also it is metonymy. Okay. Then there is no other figure of speech in that particular line. You can say and s, so alliteration, a sound is repeated. We move to the next stanza. He came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth. Okay, so here you see the Door is what? Door is a part of a house. So when part suggests the whole and the whole suggests a part, it is what? It is synecdoche. So the figure of speech in this particular line is synecdoche. In traveling round the earth, and here we can also see another figure of speech is alliteration, because C sound is repeated through the words came and cottage. K sound is repeated through those two words. Okay, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. So making and baking, those two words rhyme with each other, so you can say it is internal rhyme. It is also, students, you see, where woman, W word, word is repeated, sound is repeated, sorry. So it is alliteration. Okay, last stanza on this particular page. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done. Okay, so faint and fasting, F sound is repeated through the word faint and fasting. So that's why it is alliteration. And next line you see, for the day was almost done. The day was almost done means it refers to the evening time. Day was almost over. So now after the day gets over, evening time comes. So that's why it is metonymy. Okay. He asked her from her store of cakes. So here the word her is repeated twice. He asked her from her store of cakes. So her is repeated, so it is repetition. And he, her. So that is also alliteration. H sound is repeated. To give him a single one. So single also means one also means one. So the figure of speech over here is when two or more than two words suggest the same meaning, then it is tautology. So the figure of speech in the last line is tautology. Now we move on to the next page. So she made a very little cake. So she, S sound is repeated. So that is alliteration. Made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, here the word order is inverted. It should be as it lay baking, but it is said as it baking lay. So it is anastrophe. Grammatical order is not maintained over there. She looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Okay, so here it's repeated twice, so it is repetition. And here actions also come one after the other. She looked at it, then she thought. So it is climax also. In the next line, too large to give away. Two word T sound is repeated through two words. One is T double O and another is T O. So that's how it is alliteration. Second stanza on page 66. Therefore she needed another and still a smaller one. So small, still and smaller, S sound is repeated. So it is alliteration. Okay. But it looked when she turned it over as large as the first had done. So here in these two lines, word it is repeated in the first line. So it is repetition. And the second cake that she made is compared with the first cake. And that also, the point of comparison over here is size, students. Okay, so the figure of speech is simile, because the word of comparison like is also used. Okay, as is used. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat. So students, you see over here the figure of speech is repetition, because the word rolled is repeated twice. Okay. There is no other, another figure of speech in the same line. In the first line is she and scrape. S sound is repeated through those two words, so it is alliteration. And baked it thin as a wafer. So here also second cake that she was making, third cake that she was making is compared with a wafer. Here again the common quality talked about is the size. It is thin. Okay, so that is simile. Okay, as a wafer. So that cake is compared with a wafer. But she couldn't part with that. Couldn't, again negative statement, so it is litotes. Okay. Next stanza. For she said only, S sound is repeated, she and said. So it is alliteration. My cakes that seem too small when I eat them myself are too large to give away. Okay, so in these three lines you see two opposite ideas are mentioned. Okay, cakes looking very small, and at the same time cakes are also looking very big, large. So that is antithesis. Okay, and the word too is repeated, so it is repetition. Last line you see, so she put them on the shelf. So here also S sound is repeated through the word so, she and self. Shelf. So it is alliteration. Next stanza you see, then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. So here two rhyming words are there, angry and hungry. So that's why you can say it is internal rhyme. Okay, angry and hungry. And F sound also is repeated through the words for and faint. So students, it is alliteration. H sound is also repeated through the words he and hungry. So it is alliteration. Next line you see, and surely such a woman, surely such, S sound is repeated, so it is alliteration, was enough to provoke a saint. Now here students, you have to understand this particular line. Okay, normally this figure of speech is very rarely seen. But if we here think very deeply, we can come to know that saints are very calm people. They cannot be easily provoked. Understood? Saint Peter himself is giving the message of love, compassion and forgiveness. And he doesn't forgive this lady. He transforms her into a bird. So here it is what you can say it is epigram. It is a very pointed line spoken over here that the lady is provoking the saint. Understood? So it is epigram. Then, and he said, you are far too selfish. Okay, so students, to dwell in a human form. So here you say again, it is an epigram because it is again drawing our attention to a particular fact that the woman was very selfish. Okay, so selfish people, we find so many humans very selfish. And here, according to Saint Peter, she was so selfish that she could not live in a human form. But around us, we find so many people who are very selfish. So it is epigram. To have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. So here, students, you see the F sound is repeated through the words food and fire. And all those things are arranged in their ascending order: food, shelter and fire. First of all, man requires food to live, then he requires shelter, and then he requires fire to keep himself warm. So that is climax also. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food. So in these two lines you see, it is again simile because the lady is compared with the bird. Okay, you shall build as the birds do. The common quality talked over here is the building of nest. As the birds are building their nest, that lady is also transformed into a bird, so she will also have to make her nest herself. And shall get your scanty food. So in that line you see shall and scanty. Those two words begin with S sound, so it is alliteration. By boring and boring and boring. So boring word is repeated 3 times, so it is repetition. All day in the hard dry wood. Okay, so all day in the hard dry wood. So again it is hyperbole. Whole day woodpecker won't go on doing that work. The woodpecker will take some rest also. The woodpecker would go for just finding some food. It would also go for flying somewhere else. So here it is said that whole day it will continue the same thing. So it is hyperbole. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word. Okay. So here students, you see W and S sound is repeated. So it is alliteration. Okay. Went and word, alliteration. And she and speaking. So S sound. So that is also alliteration. And out of the top flew a woodpecker. So you can say it is anastrophe. it is word order is changed. You should say, and the woodpecker flew out of the top. Instead, it is different. For she was changed to a bird. Okay. So here she woodpecker refers to the lady. So that's why it was metonymy. She had a scarlet cap on her head. So head is a body part. So that's why it is synecdoche. And here you see her head had. Three words are there which are beginning with H sound. So it is alliteration. And that was left the same. Okay, students. So that is also a part of that sentence. Then in the next two lines we see, but all the rest of her clothes were burned black as coal in the flame. So clothes are compared with coal. The word of comparison is as. So the figure of speech is simile. Okay. And the last stanza, in the last stanza, we again find what? Hyperbole. And every country school boy has seen her in the wood. Every school boy they talk about. So that is an overstatement. Many boys may not have seen this bird. Okay. But here they talk that every country school boy has seen her in the wood. So that's why it is hyperbole. Where she lives in the trees till this very day. So here the sound is repeated through the words, the sound is repeated through the words trees and till. Okay, so it is alliteration. Boring and boring for food. For food, F sound. So it is alliteration, and boring is repeated twice, so it is repetition. So students, with that we come to the end of this wonderful poem. I hope you have understood all the figures of speech. By applying your mind nicely, you can also make out. Remember, you will have to identify the figure of speech. Already 4 options will be given below every line. So if you know all the figures of speech in detail, if you have understood them well, you can easily identify them and can get those marks. So students, here we end this poem. I hope you have understood it well. Kindly go for some writing practice also. Write the question answers and figures of speech. So that will give you writing practice also. Okay, when we meet next time, we will see your 6th lesson. Till that time, stay fit, stay fine. God bless you. Have a good day.